Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles.
Hello, everybody. This is Alumni Live and a special little broadcast for you. My name is Joe McCargar, former professor at Grand Valley State University in the Visual Media Arts Department in film and video. And today, our subject is the other half of the picture. In other words, half the meaning. In other words, sound. It's our sound issue. And I have with me Bryen Hensley and Sean Quashnie, alumni, yes, from the mid to late 1990s. Am I right about that? Bryen, there we are. Bryen's 1993, and Sean, you are
95.
95. So goes back a ways. I just want to talk to you, and I hope that those of us who are hearing and listening are getting the opportunity to see what life's like in the sound business. And again, what's cool about it, it's from kind of two different perspectives. One is much more in the live area, what might become production sound area in the world of broadcast and movies in terms of production sound. And the other is a post-production, particularly in the gaming world. And there's wonderful experiences that are common to both. Sound's got the upper hand in both situations, but one is slightly more controlled. The other is, right out there. So I'd like to begin by kind of asking the question, what was the circumstance or say series of events or the environment that got you guys going into the fields that you're going into? If you would say first briefly, what it is you do, and then what was that thing that started this all off for you? Bryen, go ahead.
Sure. Well, glad to be here. This is a great forum, and it's really fun to do these things. So for me, I graduated in 93, and I was lucky enough to meet somebody here in video. And it was about the summer before my junior year in college, and I got to come down and see a post audio place. And up to that point, I had been kind of just doing as many different things as I could in college. I was editing and filming and doing as many different things to figure out my path. And then when I went down to Chicago and stepped foot into that studio, it was like the light bulb went off for me. It was just, this is where I want to be. I love post-production audio, and the rest is history. I got a job. I was lucky enough to get a job right out of college here in Chicago, and I've been doing it ever since. I worked at a couple different post houses, and then about 3 years ago, I came on to the company I'm working at now, which is called Noise Floor. And then this past January, they invited me to become part owner of the company. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And we do full service post audio. We do films, we do video games, as you mentioned, we do commercials, we do documentaries, television, and we have a staff composer as well. So we really, in terms of posts for the visual medium, we really kind of do it all. And it's been just a wonderful career for me so far. So, and lots more to go.
Sounds terrific. Sean, what about you?
I do location sound and audio for TV broadcast. I think I got started it took me a while to get the sound. I started in grip and lighting, did a few years of that, and noticed that there was a need for sound people locally here in Grand Rapids, and bought my own kit and started going out as a sound person. Since then, I've done too many corporate videos to count, a bunch of reality show type work, and feature films when they were here, when we had the film incentives. Did a few of those, and the sports broadcast, audio for that, everything from high school sports to a few Super Bowls and Stanley Cups.
That's throwing you into the deep end. That's fantastic. In terms of looking kind of on a practical matter, what's a typical day for you guys in terms of preparation? You get up, you have your 2 cups of coffee, and assuming that there is a specific project for the day, what's that like, Bryen, for you?
Well, really, it comes down to what that project is. Like I said, and the wonderful thing about where I work is that each day is a little bit different. If it's a commercial that day, or if it's a film that day, or if it's the video game stuff. But really, it's come in, get the elements that I need. If it's a commercial or a quick time in an OMF or an AAF, you bring those things into a workstation, and then you start breaking things down. You're going through production audio and making sure that's all where we need it to be. Then we start to do, depending on what we're doing, and then we start to sound design. We're adding ambience and backgrounds and any special sound effects or whatever that we're creating, bringing in the music. If it's getting composed by our composer, he'll pop in, kind of see what I'm doing sound design wise. The cool part about here is we can kind of move back and forth from the sound design suite to the composition suite and work with each other to make sure everything's complementary. Sometimes you get a sound designer going off doing their thing and the composer's doing their things. You bring things together and they don't always jive. But here I can just run down the hall, say, "Hey, Devin, what are you doing right now with in this particular spot?" And he can tell me what he's doing there. I can listen to it, and then I can go back and work on my sound design and make sure it's working with what he's doing. Once you get all the elements in place, in the way we like them, then we're doing final mixes and making sure everything's sounding good. Right now, we don't have clients in as much as we normally do, obviously with everything going on. So it's a lot of just sending mixes off or doing session with clients and things like that for final mixes, or we just send them a mix and they listen to it and give us comments and we kind of shoot it back and forth that way. And then it's kind of wrapped up. So that's sort of a regular day. If we're working on a film, it's a little more involved and depending on the part that I'm doing of the film. Usually the films we're doing as a team. So we break up each role amongst the team. We've dialogue editors and Foley artists and sound effects editors and sound designers. And so everyone's kind of taking their little piece of it and doing their part. So that day would look a little bit different. The video game stuff's a whole different kind of process. So yeah, it really depends on what the project is and then we go from there.
I suspect it varies, but you're into probably anywhere from an 8-hour day to a 16-hour day. Is that just vary that widely? Yeah,
it does. It really just depends. It's funny that a friend of mine was telling me a term recently, and I don't know who came up with it, but I liked it. There's this thing called a passion tax. And it's like when you do what you love, do whatever the hours are required. And that's sort of how I approach. You just kind of my passion and I just work however long it is. But it's anywhere from 8 to 12 to 14 or more, depending on what's needed.
Okay. Sean, what about yourself? I suspect, being out in the world, it's a little bit different for setup.
Yeah, every day, every job is a little bit different. They usually start the night before while you're prepping and loading gear. Make sure you know a little bit of what the project's about. Make sure you have the proper equipment and enough of it. And then it's kind of hurry up and wait. Sound is usually waiting on camera and lighting. And then we jump in there at the last minute with our wired microphones. And before that, we'll put on wireless microphones on talent and then see what happens during the day. And it can range from running around, following talent with a boom pole or sitting in a corporate environment recording some CEOs.
And I love the challenges of live sound myself, love them both. So this just kind of goes to a personal thing, a question that I always like to ask people who've been doing it for a while, but beginning with you, Sean, what about your core personality or your temperament, I guess you would say, makes you suited to this kind of work? What is it that, as Bryen says, what makes you kind of predisposed to the passion of doing this?
It's kind of something that gradually came along. I kind of fell into audio, as I mentioned before, lack of audio people in town here, and things just kind of steamrolled from there. I bought my own equipment to get the business started, and each job is different. And that's one of the things that I find very enjoyable. And there's always a challenge. And those are two of the big things that I enjoy and the people I work with.
I can see that. Bryen, what about yourself? What is it in your personality that you think makes you really suited to?
Boy, that's a great question. I guess it would just be, I love working with people, and this is a team sport. You got to work with a lot of different people. Sometimes you're by yourself, but a lot of times you've got a room full of 7 or 8 people, and they all want different things. They all want to hear different things, and being able to sort of achieve that, listening to all the different voices and being able to sort of get what they're looking for and making sure everybody walks out getting what they want. And so I think I deal pretty well with different personalities. I think I'm pretty patient. And so I think that's really it, is just being able to work with either a large group of people, a small group of people, or a single director on a film or whatever, just shifting gears a little bit. And certainly as when I became an owner here, also working with the staff, being able to deal with the different personalities of different designers and composers as well. has brought a slightly different challenge to it.
Let's talk just a little bit about like career paths. For myself, it kind of falls into that same area where started out as a musician, and I'll put that in quotes. I wasn't truly a musician, but started up a band, a rock and roll band, and that's in the Beatles era, where I said to myself, geez, I want to do that because of just how much fun it was. And so we started playing quite a bit. We ended up getting signed to a wonderful record company called Capitol Records, which we were kind of like third or fourth tier. We weren't the Beatles, but what that did with me, and when I talked about this, the environment or the thing that tipped you towards this, was I was in the studio as a performer, but I always was kind of curious about what happened on the other side of the glass. And I'm thinking, wow, that's interesting. Of course, we would go in there to listen to mixes and stuff like that. And I thought, boy, this is my chances of being a rock star are very, very rare, but this looks like a great plan B to me. And indeed, when I finished my first teaching job out in Montana, I came back and one of my friends in the band was working at a recording studio. So it's like, what else do you want in life in terms of luck? And that ended up to be River City, where I am to this day. So I came back to Grand Rapids from Montana, where I taught, and ended up at this recording studio in 1977. So it's a long-term job. About 1980, I got a call from this local college, Grand Valley State College, as it was at that time. And the chair of the School of Communication said, we heard that you teach and we're interested if you'd like to do an advanced audio class. And I thought for about a second and I said, yep. And so the rest is history. And then as I continued to teach, my world shifted from straight up studio work to teaching what I knew. And with a BS in ed, it just followed right along. The interesting, the name of the band originally that I was in that kind of got this whole thing going was called the Frederick. And that was named after Frederick, Michigan, where we were traveling through to back up a national act up in, believe it or not, Gaylord. There was a real cool teen club up there that these guys were going to play at. So we ended up doing that, renamed ourselves from original name to the Frederick. And then when we signed with Capitol, we became the Rock Garden. And then after our first release, we became the Garden. So you couldn't lead a more magical life. You just happened to get signed with a record company, being a 17-year-old in a rock band, and end up with a 40-year career in teaching and recording. So much gratitude there. Speaking of which, as a teacher and as a sound recordist, I've had a few what I call projects from hell. And it's one of those things where you get into something and it all looks good, and then something about the circumstance or the performers or some group dynamic just sends it right into the toilet. And I'm always interested, a professional standpoint, especially with you guys having done so much. Describe for me, if you would, Bryen, a project from hell that you remember and what made it that way.
Yeah, you always have those, and sometimes projects just seem cursed. Like no matter what you do.
Yes, we use the term snake bitten.
Yeah. And you just have those. The ones that usually stick out in my mind, I don't have a specific example in mind, but it usually revolves around picture changes, and it happens for whatever reason. They have to go back in, and it's always that conforming. It's always that, okay, you've got a 10-minute project and they re-edited it, and so you got to you've got all your sound design done, you got your music done, you got everything done, and it's like, oh yeah, we need to go in and we're removing 5 seconds here, 2 frames there, or
yes,
whatever it might be. And then you got to go meticulously go in there and, make sure everything's lining up. And inevitably there's a cut they didn't tell you about and it's not lining up. And it's usually those that are the ones that stick out in my mind where I'm having to conform all my audio to a new picture. And the short ones usually are okay. I've had it happen on feature films and it's just,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
you got several hundred tracks, and you're trying automation everywhere, and you're digging through, going, why is it not working? Where is it? So,
I usually that I kind of chalk up to a situation where the client seems to know what they want, but they really don't. You see that coming like a freight train.
yep.
Yeah. What about you, Sean? A
Um,
project from hell.
I think one of the 50 Cent films that shot in Grand Rapids, we shot over the winter, and 18-hour days outside in bitter cold. That's not fun, especially when you're on set for the 18 hours and you maybe roll an hour of dialogue if you're lucky, but sitting around waiting.
There you are now. I can see a picture there of you
Right.
standing in the middle of Lake Michigan there.
Yeah, it's weather, things can be very extreme in location stuff. And that's my biggest adversary, rain and snow.
Yeah. Right. But think about all the growth that
Yeah.
happens to you in getting through that. Another question I had, I think it's kind of a practical matter because it involves your employment and it goes to your personality as well. Sean, what is it about you, say, as a person and to call it something very basic, as a vendor, that you think makes a client come back to you, often? Because you both know that in this business, what we rely upon is that repeat business where you gain the trust of someone and you've got an ally for years. What do you think it is about you personally that makes the client keep coming back?
I think work ethic has a lot to do with it. When I'm on set, I'm trying to bust my butt and have clients see me working and know that they're going to get a good product. And also being able to work with the rest of the crew. If grip and lighting needs a hand, jump in and do a little bit of help. Not so much on a union job, but on our local work here, the film and video community here is, a lot like a big family. We've been working together for years and we're friends with each other. And the goal is a great project. And when clients see that, they see a good team, they bring them back.
Terrific. Bryen, I assume it's kind of the same, but do you have a different perspective on that?
No, I think he kind of hit it. It's really what, like you said, it's trust. I have several clients that I've had for over 20 years, and I think what makes them keep coming back is they know they can call me, and I'm the type of personality that I answer my phone pretty much anytime, or I'll check email anytime. It's not like at 5 o'clock I turn it off. I try,
Right,
but
of course.
and they know they can hand me something and they're going to get it back, and it's going to be right, and it's going to be what they want, and they know that I'm always looking out for them and the project. So it's just that trust that you build up over time. And I think that comes with experiences. They don't have to do a lot of hand holding. They don't have to do a lot of explaining, a lot of whatever. They can just say, here's this project, clean it up, mix it, make it sound really good, and send it back. And it's not a lot of back and forth,
I love that transition where they have to be sitting next to you for a while, and then all of a sudden they just go, "Oh, you can handle this. I don't need to be here."
Right.
And
Yep.
then you go, "Yes." Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with the client being there, but it's that great transition.
With
Um,
jumping over with Brian's thoughts on trust, that goes in location sound as well. A producer, our director, they're going to lean on you to make sure the sound is good. So if you're shooting outside and a plane goes over, or you know, uh, cars or sirens, they're going to want to know that and trust that you'll raise your hand and say, "Hey, maybe we should do another take." And I'm sure post audio appreciates that as well.
oh, that is, to me, that's kind of like the ultimate do unto others type of thing where you just don't want them to be pulling their hair out. It's just like it's bad form to have the audio come over and have people going, "Oh God, no, here we
Yeah,
go."
especially on a
Um,
CBO or somebody you're not
absolutely.
going to get
Yeah.
another chance with.
We do have some questions coming in from the audience. I have something from young woman Sarah Bellamy, and we're looking for her question. She says, since networking is a big part of film with all the COVID regulations and online classes, How would you say students can start networking and getting to know professors well this fall? Terrific question. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I don't know. You can get a hold of me because I need to do some networking now with COVID. All the work went away, but there's a lot of groups, Facebook and other areas, LinkedIn and those types of websites. Those are great for networking. Kind of flip through and see what you can do there. Drop a quick message, say hi, and things start to roll. As far as online classes, yeah, I don't really have any real thoughts about that one. But networking, just anything you can do to meet somebody new or have a friend introduce a friend, it kind of snowballs from there.
Bryen, your perspective on this?
It's a tough one, and I think we're all sort of trying to figure that out as far as the networking goes. I would tell people, if for anyone who's going to want to get back when things get back to work, and Chicago's getting ready to start probably here in a month, with some of the studios and the production stuff. I would definitely recommend to everybody to read up on COVID and the procedures and things that are in place. Understand how a film set's going to work. There's a lot of great documents out there. SAG and all of the unions kind of came together and did a document. It's about 35 pages long, and make sure you just understand that, because I think people who are going to be hiring and they want to know that people understand it and they're going to be flexible, because those sets are going to look very, very different. And Sean can speak to that too. In terms of in studio, we've had to do a lot of stuff here differently. We just simply can't operate the way we were before. We have to clean rooms all the time and make sure it's clean and sterile and all of that stuff. So when people do come in, and then I think people, when they start hiring, are going to be looking for people who are going to be flexible, who are going to understand those kinds of policies and things like that. So
That's a
um,
really good point. Really good
and
point.
then, networking. I have one son in college, and he's been doing a lot of online stuff, and he just talks to his professors as much as he can through Zoom classes and things like that. And I think, unfortunately, that's what's available to them in terms of connecting with professors and stuff like that. The networking stuff, Chicago usually has a lot of networking things going on, and a lot of those have, at least the in-person ones, have stopped. There's actually a cool one this week. There's a thing called the Midwest Film Festival, and they hired out, usually it's at a theater here in town. What they did is they actually hired a drive-in for a night, and so they're going to do a bunch of short film stuff, playback and stuff, at a drive-in. I thought that was kind of a really cool and sort of creative way of getting people out to see films, but they can stay in their cars and kind of stay socially distanced and stuff like that. So at least here, I think there's some creative things that are going on in terms of networking. You just got to, like Sean said, just keep your eye on Facebook and join some of those groups, and really just look out for any opportunity that you can find as we sort of all work through this sort of unique time.
Again, from a professor's perspective, for me, while I was teaching, getting email from a student with an intelligent question, or someone just inquiring about the classwork in general, that always just made me feel great. Professors are not celebrities. I'm sure you all know this. The best of them love to get that feedback, and a simple email, as low tech as it seems right now, is huge. If they know you as the semester comes to a close, they're going to remember you, and that translates into all sorts of goodwill and, clearly, practically speaking, a much better grade.
We're taking a short break to tell you about the Dirk Koning Memorial Film and Video Scholarship. Here's Gretchen Vintage remembering Dirk Koning.
The Koning Scholarship enables students to get that kind of an education, to be a good filmmaker, to be able to express their voice, and to continue Dirk's dream.
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show.
This is to both of you. Michelle writes us, in an industry inundated with new must-have technology, how do you tell young people how to balance the gear or the equipment versus the knowledge of how to use it? Let's start with Sean.
As far as the knowledge of how to use it, most of the time you just kind of flounder through. If you know the basics about a camera or an audio deck and how to interface the two, or basic meter reading, then you can kind of fumble through any piece of gear, most piece of gears that are thrown at you. And because they do come so fast and frequently, usually you work with the other people on the set to work with them to teach some camera tricks in the menus, or they can help you out with dealing with things like, where do you find the time code on the camera? Where am I plugging that into?
See, so much of that is, you're right, it's kind of on the fly. And man, I'll tell you, just from my own experience, it sure doesn't hurt to be in touch with industry publications and stuff like that. I find myself a little guilty of not doing that as much as I should. And again, it's almost like a networking thing where you need to know what's current. And then a lot of the best way to find it is even the manufacturers themselves, because they're all in commerce, right? And they want to sell stuff.
And since the lockdown, some of the companies, one I'm specifically thinking about is Sennheiser. They're doing demos with their microphones and that. Some of the wireless companies, they'll do webcasts very similar to this, walk through their gear. And
Oh, of course, yeah.
back to Facebook and that, there's plenty of groups on there with people from around the world with experiences that you may be jumping into or you may have had, and see how they dealt with it, or ask a question about how you should deal with something.
Really quickly, just a really quick story about this exact thing. I was on Pro Tools for over 20 years. And then when I came to Noise Floor, they actually don't use Pro Tools here. They use a program called Nuendo. And it was, at 45 years old, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn a whole new way to work. And, it was pretty nerve wracking at the time. And then what I quickly realized is, once I figured out where the buttons were and what they called things and how they routed things and all of that, it's just another tool. And so, it really, I always tell students and things like that, focus on the craft, focus on what you're doing. All of these programs are going to do virtually the same thing. You just got to figure out where it is. So if you're jumping from Logic to Nuendo to Pro Tools to Reaper or whatever, it's all in there. You just got to figure out where it is. And so definitely focus on the art, focus on the craft. How are you going to use that particular hammer and what it can do,
Yeah, they're only tools.
Exactly.
I really like that, focusing on the craft. I think a plug for people I love, the film and video program at Grand Valley, to me, puts that emphasis exactly where it belongs. Gear is always in the service of the story. I think that's something that's consciously taught. We have some more questions. Looking for Alex. Hey, Alex, I know you. Let's take a look at his question. If you guys can see it, what's the future of audio in your opinion? Video games, film, TV, radio?
That's a hard one to know. I can tell you one thing: video games isn't going anywhere. Video games is huge. It's a huge industry. Games are being made every single day. Film, I think, is always going to be around. It's changing, and certainly the distribution is changing. There's a ton more places for films to get played than when I started in the business. You got Netflix and you got tons of online distribution methods. So I think it's really just understanding standards and understanding where things are going to get played more than ever. Radio, I don't know. It's hard to say what's going to happen there. One area that I'm actually very intrigued in right now is the area of scripted podcasts. It's kind of a throwback to the radio dramas of the 30s, 40s, 50s. And it's kind of circling back here a little bit. There's a lot of scripted podcast kind of stuff happening, which I think is kind of cool because it's strictly audio, which is great. No pesky picture to get in the way. I'm kidding, of course. So yeah, I'm kind of really intrigued by those and where those kind of go.
Great. We have a question from Suzanne. There we go. Great question as well. What's the best way for graduates to get to work in sound? What experience/knowledge should they have? Sean, what do you think?
So you can get the basics at school, but get out, see if you can find a mentor, somebody you can job shadow on a job or two. Yeah.
You know, what I thought was really nice about what you said. Oh, there you are now. What you said was, you're doing light and grip stuff on the set, and you see that there's this need for audio. To me, when you're on the set and you see something that needs doing, if you do it, people recognize that. And a lot of that is having that kind of sense of looking over the set and seeing what needs doing. And your point about the need for audio is backed up by what I get at the studio all the time, is that we get films to do post-production sound on, and the producer or director comes in always with kind of the excuse of, yeah, well, one of the reasons we're bringing it to you is because the sound is a little iffy. And I'm just going, oh no, save me. But what that says is there's room out there for good sound people. There's a need. And all that is just being observant. If you get the chance to be on set, observe and learn. Bryen, do you have anything on that as well?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what he said. I think you just gotta video game audio is a wide open field. I think there's a ton of game companies that pop up and they're looking for good sound people always. At least in here in Chicago, production audio is it's a good field for people. There's several network shows going on, so they kind of soak up a lot of people. So there's always opportunities to be on commercials and those kinds of things. So it's a pretty wide open as well. In post, a little trickier on a ton of places like ours, but there's a ton of content being created. There's more content being created than ever before. And like Sean said, just stay in contact with people you went to school with, because you know what, they're going to make content. And so if you want to do sound, do sound. Don't get distracted by, obviously we all got to work and we got to eat and pay rent and all of that kind of stuff, but just keep working. And eventually talent and creativity and all of that will float to the top and people will recognize it and you'll start to get work. So you just got to persevere and just keep doing it.
I was thinking, I guess we might say as a wrap up, maybe some final thoughts. Many years ago, it was, I'm sure, in the 90s when we had a segment at River City with my Audio 3 students about the industry. One of our alumni, Joe Warner, I believe his name was, came and talked to the students. And he was in Hollywood for quite some time and did a lot of work. And at the end of his talk, I asked, give me a one sentence impression of what it takes to be successful in the business. And it was jaw dropping in a way, but it was very Joe Warner. And he said, I'll tell you what, the two words are be nice. And I thought, that's an idea. He said, you're always going to find experts in the field and in their particular job on the set. But if you're not nice, you can be great, but people just don't want to work with you. Now, I don't want that to steer you to any one particular thing, but if you were to give Bryen a kind of a one sentence or a few word summary about what it takes to be successful in the business, what might that be to you?
Well, it's hard to top be nice, but patience is always a big thing for me. And that goes along with being nice, but just being patient. Every client is different. Every need is different. And then to go along with that is creativity. We're here to tell stories and make things sound as good as we can. But along with that creativity is where the patience comes in, because a lot of times, and you guys, I'm sure know this, you want to do something one way and, you have really cool, grand ideas. And then the client's like, no, we don't want to do any of that. We want it to be simpler. So you got to be patient when you think it wants to be one way and they want it another way. It's like, well, okay, you're the client. So you just got to be patient, and hopefully you can work in some of your ideas and your creativity. At least in my experience, a lot of my clients, they'll be like, oh, I hadn't really thought of it. That's a really cool idea, And so just staying patient and being creative, because the story is everything. And everything we do is in service to that.
And Sean,
I'm going to go with pay attention. When you're out on a set, you have to have your eyes open all the time, so you know what the producer and director want, and DP, and kind of the general story that you're trying to convey. You can learn a lot from that. Just stand back and pay attention.
right on. My feelings about that fall right along you guys' lines, but my mantra is the client is it. That's it. End of story. If whatever happens, it's got to start with them. It has to come from them. Now you can steer it once you know what their real desire is, but it's their thing. And I don't know how many times I've just taken a deep breath and said, director so and so, you're the last word. I like my idea. I'm saying this, of course, in my brain, but you're it. And I think if you keep in mind the story comes first, of course, but in practical matter, it's the client, and they're the ones that butter your bread, so to speak. You know what? I think that we're nearing our end time here briefly, and I want to say how grateful we all are that you guys had a chance to do this, and we're willing to do it. We're grateful that you took up the invitation, and so I say thank you so much, both of you, for taking your time to do this. And we hope to see you on the set somewhere in the future. Thank you. And
All right.
thanks for everybody for watching and listening to Alumni Live.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Bryen.
Thank you, guys.
Sean.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad you're here. Thank you for listening.